welcome to Kinship Cafe. I'm your host, Jim Jones, and today we are joined with Daring Greeley.
Hi there.
How you guys doing?
Awesome, Jim.
Great to have you guys back on the show. You're actually, I think, our first musicians to make a return trip, so thank you so much for that.
Nice.
So today we're going to be talking about music and its ability to shape and transform our world and how we look at it. But before we do that, would you guys mind starting us off with a song?
Let's do it.
Right on. Thank you guys so much. That was amazing.
No problem, Jim.
And it's interesting that you played that song because it actually ties into one of the points that I wanted to make about music. And that is, it has lots of ways that it helps to shape and change things in our world. And one of the ways it does that is by helping us to remember and not forget about things that have happened. And that song in particular is bringing back to memory a particular event in Kent State. What is your guys' thoughts on how you see music in that regard in terms of helping us to remember things from the past that are important?
Well, specifically, I mean, I think it's almost like this valve that society needs to continuously push to let out steam and to let the expression flow. Otherwise, it sort of boils over and is to allow ourselves to express ourselves and the artist to yell a little bit and to scream when things don't feel right and things aren't going well and things are not fair, or they're not equitable, or there's some crime going on, or there's some injustice, and that society needs that constantly, that pressure valve to let it out, to be able to have some way to talk about it and to sort of shed that emotion that comes along with things like that are constantly happening.
Yeah. I know probably for a lot of people, maybe your guys' age, if it wasn't for that song, you might not know anything about that particular event. In fact, apart from that song, have you guys ever heard about it or know what the song was about?
Not until we heard the song, or started singing it and did a little research into it. But obviously it had an impact on a lot of people's life back then, and it's cool that it's still remembered and that we can release it again like we did a couple months ago and kind of revive it a little bit and get people our age kind of still thinking and about music that made a difference, because it's kind of going in a bit of a different direction right now. But yeah.
What's that other direction you see it going?
There's not that much substance or reality to it. There's no. It kind of all seems to be about I don't know, partying and fun and stuff like that. Instead of what it used to be in the 60s and 70s, which is where we take all our influence from. It was all about either not fighting back, but joining everyone in one force and one love against maybe the government or whatever it was at that point, or whatever it may be now.
Raising that awareness and maybe trying to mobilize people to action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like that. I know you guys love to do a lot of CSN and Y.
Mm-hmm.
Love those guys as well, even some of the other stuff. Do you guys do For What It's Worth from Buffalo Springfield? That's an interesting song. It would be fun to hear you guys do sometime. But, I think a lot about, like you were saying, in the 60s, 70s, how much the music was being used to move people into action, not just keeping it alive, the memory of things that happened, but for a purpose. And so there's almost kind of like a revolutionary aspect to music, or a very political aspect of music. What do you think about, like, current day, how we might use music in a way that's going to address our current situations that would be impactful?
I think in the 60s and 70s, when there was people like Joni Mitchell and Neil Young and all those people, there wasn't a huge separation between the masses and them. There wasn't this superstardom, huge gap between them. And so those people were feet on the ground. They knew what was happening with society, and that's really what they were writing about. They weren't writing to make hits. They weren't expressing themselves so that they could make millions of dollars and live in mansions. They were true artists that wrote about what was happening in society, so feet on the ground. So when we talk about writing songs and our music being relevant, the first thing we talk about is there can't be any gap between us and the way we live and how the masses are living, because otherwise how would we even be in touch with what we're supposed to be singing about and what some of the challenges and problems that society is having? How would we be able to create art that people can relate to if we're living in a mansion while everybody else is that's what we knew right away, that the whole industry wasn't really going to serve us, because our end goal couldn't be to become rich and famous, because then how are we supposed to make great art after that? We wouldn't understand what to write about. I mean, you can't write about your Ferrari breaking down. There's nothing impactful about that.
So it's that the passion comes from that lived experience?
Yeah. Feet on the ground, talking to real people, having the conversations, feeling people's pain, understanding, really in tune with the energy that's going on. Like, people are lacking connection. What do we do about that? How can music serve in that way? How can we write songs that bring people together so we feel connected again, so it rises masses up again? I mean, that's what I think music's supposed to do, is inspire and inspire action, as you even said. But the action now is to just rise up and feel that humanness again. The love, health, connection, truth, purpose, and freedom.
Yeah, I like that. The idea that it's how do we connect with each other? Because that's another key thing that I think music is able to do, is it, in that opportunity where we come together in that participation, we might not be the ones who are performing the music, but when you're doing music where the rest of us can plug into it, right, then there's that bond that happens from being a part of that common experience that's really great because it can bring people from all different types of backgrounds together that might not normally connect, right? And how powerful is that?
Yeah, we're very lucky to have like the music in our lives, because it's one of those things what everyone can relate to, you know, and everyone can find a way to relate to a love song or relate to a political song in some ways, you know. So we're pretty lucky to be able to stand on a stage and yell out what we mean and what we see, what we want to see change and stuff like that. So, yeah.
So I'm curious. There's a type of music that's more, let's say, indigenous or tribal, right? That is a different kind of level of participation. I'm thinking of like maybe something like, you know, drum circle or something along those lines. Have you guys ever experimented with that kind of a thing? Not necessarily on a performance stage, but just maybe another kind of community context?
Funny you asked that question, Jim, because we actually have a song called Reflections of Me was exactly that. It was 150 people, all with instruments in their hand, that played for about 15, 20 minutes before we even started playing any music. And then we added these 2 chords to it, and then it became something live, and we created it on the top of this mountain with this drum circle. We created the whole song live like that while we were making it up as we went, and now we have another section of that where we're singing together too. So we invite everybody to make noise, and we invite everybody to sing together. And you're absolutely right. When we're vibrating like that, or we're vibrating with our voice, and when we're vibrating together like that, it makes this amazing vibrational, energetic difference in our lives and everybody else, because we can feel it, the energy bounce off each other higher and higher and higher. And so our experiment, as Jim Morrison's was to see how high we can get. Our form of getting high might be different than his, because I think we can do it energetically.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I think that there's a lot that is kind of lost in some of the ways that music is experienced today, because it's so much kind of performance-oriented, where people come to receive and rather than necessarily participate.
Interact, yeah.
Yeah, and I know like in different settings where I've been involved with music, and even where you would think it would like maybe make more sense to have other people involved in more like a worship kind of a context, it was still for a lot of musicians very difficult to want to have, you know, the untrained masses participate, because it was like, are they going to be able to stay in time or whatever? And I was always kind of frustrated by that, because I thought, you know, there's just something, like you said, that's just magical that happens when people come together all participating. That, I mean, the elevation that happens is just amazing. The transcendence.
Absolutely. Yeah. So much so that we probably should write some more of those songs, eh?
Well, and I think that one of the things that I love about you guys is how much you're committed to this idea of community, and that you've actually got this group of people that, I mean, you could be playing multiple times a week and they still come. I mean, because it's such a family, and it's so awesome. And you've got that ability to take those experiences and develop these kind of things in a way that I don't know of other bands being able to do something like that.
Well, we study the energy. Like, we're not just making music, we're studying the energy. We're students of that. And so we're feeling, we're experimenting, we're asking questions, we're saying, how is that audience? Because, again, that bounces off each other to whatever heights. And I know that a lot of people are coming there to just feel better. Not to necessarily listen to great music or anything, just to feel better. It starts there. Great music is one of the channels, I guess, to that, but they really just want to come and feel better. So if we play great music, that makes them feel better, but how else can we do that? We can smile at them, we can acknowledge them, we can hug them, we can really hug them. We can look at them in their eyes, we can remember their names, we can always give someone 5 minutes of our time before, during, or after a show. And there's so many things that we've studied to make sure that we take the energy as high as we possibly can, not just with the music, but within our existence, I guess.
You're really present at the event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely have noticed that. So one of the things, like at Kinship Cafe, we want to look at different issues related to life, well-being. How do we bring that about? And when I think about myself and my interests and concerns, so often it comes back to the question of, what kind of world are we passing on to the next generation? What am I leaving for my kids? And it's a hard road sometimes to try and make any kind of progress into opening up people's minds into current issues that are going on, or how we can affect changes in our lives to make things better. And my background tends to be fairly academic, right? So my wheelhouse is more kind of, diving deep into the technical side of things. But what I've realized is that music has the ability to communicate at a level that is so much more powerful in terms of people being able, one, to hear it, but also to remember it. I'm curious, how many hours do you, assuming you had the energy to do it, how many hours straight do you think that you could play music without any repeats? Not the energy part of it, but just what you know as far as music that you could just play.
Our band?
Yeah.
I don't know, 6, 7, 8 hours. I think we know 320 songs or something like that.
So think about that. Think of all the lyrics that go to those 320 songs, how much that is. Could you recite that many pages of a book you read? Right? I mean, it gets in a way that regular kind of just academic stuff can't. And I mean, I know for myself, the song will come on the radio, maybe I haven't heard it for years, but all of a sudden I know all the words to it, right? And I can just sing along. It's got that ability to sneak in kind of under the radar and affect you at kind of that gut level that gives music kind of a very important role, I think, in terms of social transformation and bringing about awareness and awakening. One of the other aspects, I think, that's hard when we're thinking about social transformation is how do we open up people's imagination to be able to see or envision what a change looks like, right? And so, again, what a great platform for being able to create this space to be able to perceive things differently. I'm thinking of a song that's kind of directly to that point, but Imagine by John Lennon, right? I mean, I remember when I was hearing that as a kid, that really had some powerful impacts on me and how I was thinking about things. Have you had that kind of experience with either that song or other songs about being able to create that kind of space to just see things differently?
The genius is creating an incredible melody that makes people feel good, but also having lyrics that can make a difference in the background, right? So that's one of the really hard parts about writing, is trying to get people to listen by making them feel a beat that they're attracted to, and then putting some words behind it that actually mean something and that they'll remember, So, I mean, that's what we try to do when we're writing songs, but it's very hard to do, because you don't always want to be hitting people in the face with political stuff all the time, right? Because you are trying to make them feel good at a lot of our concerts,
Right.
So
right.
It's a bit of a balance there for sure.
Yeah. What do you think, then, are responsibilities that artists have in terms of their craft?
I guess Dale always used to say, with great privilege comes great responsibility, and it's not all luck that we become good musicians and a little talented with what we do, but at the same time, we've worked hard to get to where we are now, and now we're in a place where we have this beautiful privilege to be able to share some important stuff. So I guess it just kind of seems like our responsibility to do more than just make good songs for the sake of making good songs, because we actually do want to see the world change a little bit while we're alive.
What kind of changes are you thinking of?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is a food system, changing that. But yeah, that's a tough one. There's, I don't know, a lot of things just come and race to your mind.
Well, we talk about building new models for everything, so we don't actually talk about changing or fixing anything. We just talk about building new models. So a new food model, a new community model. Instead of cement neighborhoods, we picture, out on actual land, so you can have grass and dirt between your toes, and you grow your own food, and make money less important, and love, health, connection, truth, purpose, and freedom more important. And so we need to design and build new community models. And and so music, actually, it brings up a really good point, because when we think about what's next for us, I mean, the music industry is music is always in an alcohol establishment, or almost always in an alcohol establishment. Well, if you think about the purpose of music, raising the vibrational energy, why would you want to put it in an environment that actually lowers your vibrational energy, which is alcohol? And I don't have a judgment about alcohol, but it just seems like a contradiction. So how can we even build a new model to actually allow music to do what it's really, really supposed to do in an environment that allows for the maximum amount of vibrational energy? So we were even thinking about changing the industry and the venues and how we do that. Or within communities, how do we bring communities together with... I think our responsibility is to make truthful, authentic, transparent, emotional art without any results or outcomes in mind. That's how art is supposed to be created, I think. And then if something ensues from being good at that, then that's something that we can accept and allow. But it can't be about the destination when you're making art. Otherwise, how could it possibly be authentic? How could it have the true value that we want it to have, which is truly inspiring people? How could it possibly do that when it's formulaic, or it's made for the purpose of money, or it's made for the purpose of something other than what it's really supposed to be all about, which is inspiring people?
Yeah. Well, I'm very interested in the fact that you brought up the question about the relationship of alcohol to music. As you know, in the past, I've had this project, Music for the Revolution, and so this is going through some transformation. We're going to probably bring it in underneath the Kinship Cafe umbrella, and I'm going to be experimenting with an event that's going to be kind of like a mini festival kind of a thing, but it might be in a context that doesn't have any alcohol. And I've been going back and forth about that, because part of it is, if we're trying to bring about well-being and understanding about how do we get there, and this, questions about meaning and life and all of that, is it possible to have those kinds of events where people are very excited to go and be a part of it, that alcohol is not in the picture?
Yeah. We're a rock band. We don't like any rules or limitations. And we don't actually think in terms of ors. We think of ands. So, if you're going to actually build this amazing festival and amazing energy, then maybe there's a possibility to just invite the right energy, and whether there's alcohol or not becomes irrelevant. It just becomes invisible. If someone wanted to have a beer or two or whatever, that would be their choice or whatever, but they're surrounded by this greater energy or whatever that just doesn't turn into something that's more toxic than that.
Right.
So just kind of live and let live, but have a certain minimum expectation for where the energy needs to be, kind of thing, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was just thinking in terms of a particular location where it wasn't even an option, right? So would it work? Trying to put it on an event at a place that didn't allow alcohol. So
a one-day festival?
Yeah, well, this would be kind of a smaller mini type of a thing, right?
Yeah.
But whatever it was, it's just kind of interesting to think about, how would that be received? Would it fly? Would people just not go if there wasn't alcohol? I don't know. It'd be interesting.
What's the experience, say, at like Trilogy?
Right. Well,
is Trilogy alcohol free?
No, it's not.
Oh,
but it is an option. But it has an energy about it that most people there don't use.
Maybe have
alcohol.
one drink.
But at the same time, people like to enjoy it, and it's usually a good, like, organic, beverage. It's not poison either. So it's like you said, there's that balance, and it's because people are choosing to go there. It's like a bar. People are going there because they're drinking, and they want to have a good time, and so you provide music to do that. But let's say a festival or a place like that, people are going there to enjoy that festival, and they're drinking there. Like, there is a difference in that,
right?
Regardless of how much they drink, what they're doing, it's just the intention put behind it. For sure.
Yeah. Whether drinking is just incidental to the event or if it's the reason for the event.
Sure.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, it's I love that you're dreaming up these ideas and how do you do things differently. And as you know, I'm constantly trying different things and seeing, what's going to stick.
Well, we're taking it even further. I mean, so people say to me sometimes, because they know everything that we're involved with, and we have eco communities, which designs and builds sustainable communities. We have food production systems, plant and protein. We have Neo Matter Creative. We have Conscious Capital Group. We're going to let all of this out of the bag very, very soon. But these companies are all running, and people say, like, why do you do all of this when you have your band and everything? It's because we don't have any place to play. Like, we want to have this beautiful paradise in which we bring the music to, so that we can celebrate the way we want to celebrate. And those places almost don't even exist very, very much. So we have to go out and create them. So what we imagine is building 100 of these sustainable communities around the world, and now we have 100 venues that we can go and play to, and all around the world, and know that we're going into this high vibrational area already, that all these people are dying to go to the next level of vibrational energy, to listen to good music. So it just doesn't exist right now for us, it seems. So we have to be part of the creation process to show people that there can be other models outside the ones that exist right now. So that becomes really fun, and all the things that we're doing is really just going down to, we want to play music in a higher vibrational, energetic venue. Really, everything else that we're doing is exactly that. We want a better place to play our music.
Which consequently happens to be a better place for everybody.
It seems so.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about a new song that you guys are getting ready to release, Give Myself to the World. Tell me about some of the lyrics behind that song.
There's some great lyrics.
Yeah, yeah. The lyrics were good contribution from the whole band, really, and everyone's kind of had their own ideas behind it, and we all came together in such a beautiful way. They were inspired by books we were reading, Ishmael and the Celestine Prophecy, and even the book Darren Greatly was, it's influential in everything that we do, by Brene Brown. And those lyrics, like, it kind of came, Patch had this melody, and he's like, na, 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 and it kind of sounded like, give myself to the world, and we literally took those words and kind of broke it down from there. And how do we give ourselves to the world? How do you give yourself to the world? Like, what are you putting your passion into and letting your light shine? And like that's a common theme in a lot of our music, but I think we've found a way to express it differently many times. And
we were wandering, not lost.
Yeah.
So it's kind of been a funny journey for us, because at the beginning it was kind of all about music, but now kind of realize that it's a lot more than that. You see the impact it makes on people's lives and environment, and you just want to do a little more than just the music, right? So we're wandering, not lost, need no left or right. What else?
My favorite one is Mother Culture is in my mind. That's all the training and whatever you want to call it, about how they program us to think certain ways and make certain agreements. And in that pool of sinking sand, Mother Nature takes our hand to help me see the light inside of me. It's I just they're just so powerful, and I'm always just proud of what the guys are thinking about and what they're writing about and how they're expressing it in a poetic and a metaphoric and a deep way, and then how it comes together in such a melodic way that it doesn't seem like we're trying to shove an important message down people's throat, because it can't ever do that, because as well as I do, you can't tell anyone anything.
Right. Yeah.
You have to suggest it gently.
Very, very true. Wow. Yeah, a few times that I've heard that song, I've just been so impressed with just the overall concept of it, just like it spoke to me, not to mention the fact that it's very catchy in terms of the music too. A lot of fun, nice transitions. It keeps it really interesting, I think.
Yeah, and it's pretty relatable to anyone. We're all trying to find a way to serve, right? Find a way to give ourselves to the rest of the world, try to make it a better place. So for us, it's music, but it's just finding a way to completely give yourself to the energy of the world and the energy of the people around you.
Well, we use the statement, happiness is not something you pursue, it's something that ensues from having a purpose greater than yourself. That's one of the standard value statements that we have as a family and a band, as well as Liam already mentioned, with great privilege comes great responsibility. This world needs new kinds of leaders. So we could go out and make millions of dollars and keep it all to ourselves, but we know that that's already soulless because we've been there before. So now we're looking for the soulful journey, which is we already know that energetically, when we give ourselves, when we serve, when we make other people happy, when we give our energy to everybody, it comes back to us 100-fold. So it never is about us. And to go a little bit deeper on that, when I have meetings with people that say, I don't know what I want to do, but I know I love helping people. And of course, everybody loves helping people, so we don't have to even frame it like that. We can even transcend that and say that's an innate desire for all of us. Because if we are all energy, we have one innate desire, and that's to grow. That's all energy wants to do, is grow. And growth comes from serving. And cooperation. In fact, we've even redefined love as just cooperative energy.
So when you're talking about giving yourself to the world, how do you understand boundaries in that regard in terms of, when does that become self-destructive, or does it? Or how do you look at that whole question?
The balance thing is we talk about that too. I mean, when Brandon needs to go away, he says, I'll see you in 3 days, fellas. And he goes out into the desert by himself and pitches a tent and reads and writes. And I mean, you have to know yourself too. Without thinking of the duality, that's another great line in Give Myself to the World. No duality between you and me. Like the funny thing is the conversation's always down here, but up here we already know that there is no separation between any of us. There's no duality. In fact, we go really deep and say there's no me. I'm just part of this. And so once I know that there's no me, I can't sit around being sad about me because I don't even exist. I'm part of the collective. So we have a lot of fun with those conversations internally as well. So the balance is making sure that you feel your way through, and when you're feeling out of balance, make sure you can spend enough time and get to the truth and get back into balance, however that needs to happen, whether it's going away or whether it's meditating or whether it's immersing yourself into the community even deeper.
So there's definitely this idea then of having that level of self-awareness where you can realize that things are out of balance and then know how to take some steps or have some different tools at your disposal for how do you reset.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what the brain's supposed to be used for. It's not supposed to be in charge.
Okay.
This is supposed to be in charge.
Well, okay, so this is an interesting thing. We've talked about on a couple of episodes back. Maybe I'll just share it here a little bit too, like, talking about the detail stuff. Neuroscience is a thing I love to dive into. And looking at how our brains function, that it's not how a lot of us think that there's like some kind of executive control that's kind of guiding everything. There's multiple systems that are running and simultaneously, right? And that the part that's the conscious part, that ongoing narrative that we think of as I, is one small part of it, and it's actually the newer part of the brain, right? Because before we were had consciousness, we were out there navigating the world, all the way back to the reptilian part of our brain. So, we can get computers that can do our cognitive stuff really fast. But we try to get a robot to go and navigate out in the woods to the same degree that a 6-year-old child can, and it's like night and day, right? I mean, and that's all happening without conscious thought. It just does it. So when we want to do something, that bigger part of our brain that we're not really conscious of is the one that's actually in control. And an illustration that somebody used in one of the books I read that I really like as far as a metaphor for thinking about it is that part of the brain he calls the elephant, and we're like a little rider on top of the elephant. And as long as the elephant wants to do, or doesn't matter what you want to do, fine. But the second you want to do something the elephant doesn't want to, it's like no contest, right? And that's like where the problem with like things like, willpower come in, or trying to make changes in our life, is because there's so much struggle there where we try to just force it, and you can't. So you have to learn how to train the elephant, and that gets to that gut level stuff you're talking about, the emotion, right? Like how music kind of sneaks in below that radar and tickles those bones that get the thing moving differently. I mean, it's fun stuff to dive into. How do we do that? How do we make change? How do we transform our way of thinking? I also wanted to touch on one other thing you brought up earlier. You said that it's important to have a mission or purpose in life. Where do you get that from?
Well, first of all, it has to be greater than yourself. So if it's an individual purpose, it's probably not going to collect the energy you're going to need to. That's why a lot of people are mistaken about how law of attraction works, because they're trying to use law of attraction to attract millions of dollars to their bank account or something, and that's not at all how energy works, of course. But as soon as you start giving yourself to the world and having a purpose greater than yourself, then energies then start to be attracted to you and start to come in to help with that. Where you start with that is I think around what you just love to do, what gives you the energy, what inspires you. And for us, it's music, and for me, it's using the artistry. I call it the artistry of life, which is creating these new models for everything. All the models that I don't like, I'm just creating new ones. So we just use that. But I mean, everybody has. It's a fun conversation. How do you get someone to discover what their genius is if they've never been empowered to even look at it or ask that question before? Yeah. I mean, probably the worst disease in the world right now is no one is really dreaming big enough. Their dreams are really small, like between here and work. If you ask someone what they're dreaming about, it's really hard to get big dreams out of people because we've forgotten because we're judged right away. Oh, that's not possible, or that's too big, or, but that's not true at all. We need to get back to the artistry of life, which starts with dreaming. Yeah. And dreaming big. And when they said, and a perfect example is we opened for Bon Jovi, and when we got interviewed about that, they said, so now what? And my obvious answer was dream bigger. Because for some reason, I dreamed about opening for Bon Jovi. Like, why didn't I dream about him opening for us? I dreamed about opening for somebody. Well, that's just my silliness about dreaming too small, isn't it?
Kind of our limiting beliefs,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that for a lot of us, we're so underwater, right, in terms of like having to just use all of our waking energy just to try and make enough money to stay on top of staying afloat, right? That sometimes the idea of having these big dreams is like, why even bother? Because I don't know how I'm going to maybe make it to the end of the month, right? And so I think there's a lot of things that are going on right now where people are finding it hard to have that imagination, have those dreams, because life can be such a grind sometimes. And like you, I want to find ways to reinvent and think about how do we do life, right? And there is a phrase I wish I could have used for a business model, but somebody else took it already. But they use the phrase "overgrow the system," and I like that because it's not about like trying to change it or trying to replace it. It's like we're planting something new, and if it's good, it's just going to grow, and it's going to overgrow whatever. And
Yeah, and Lincoln said pretty much the same thing. And if you don't like the models that exist, make new ones to make the old ones obsolete.
yeah,
So, and that's really what we're doing.
yeah.
And again, the artistry of life allows us to do that because you have to have an imagination. So if we go all the way back to music and its role in society, and even because we speak in schools sometimes, a lot of times when we speak in schools, we say it's absolutely necessary to have arts in the school, not so that people can play an instrument and have music in their lives, but so that they can nurture the thinking and the muscles and everything that happens to come into your imagination and practicing your imagination and your dreaming skills, because row, row, row your boat reminds us this life is but a dream. So we're creating this all the time. Everything is a reflection of me, right? All of that stuff. It's your dreaming skills. It's your artistic skills to be able to dream.
Yeah. Well, I love that. How do you say artistic life?
The artistry of life.
Artistry of life, yeah. Or another phrase that I've used is the art of living, right? You know, and all of that is, I think, key for like Kinship Cafe. We're working on trying to introduce tools for people to understand stuff like mindfulness and how that can be used in so many different ways in your life to bring about that transformation, even in just being able to see the world differently, right? And help to create that space where change is possible. And I love the kind of synergy between what we're up to.
Yeah, for sure. Well, again, if everything is energy, that means we can expect. These are my words and my thoughts that I'm just having some fun with. So I'm by no means an expert in anything, and this is the first time again that I've been 51 years old, so I'm winging it. But if everything is energy, it means that everything can be expressed as energy. And so if we know that the one innate desire that energy has is to grow, then really our innate, like how we're motivated by life, is to maximize our growth. So now we can get to a micro level and think about how do we maximize growth in every aspect of my life? How do we maximize growth in our music? And creating environments on stage. For instance, we don't usually have set lists, and we don't count bars and memorize stuff, and we don't rehearse like that. We're live. We're always playing live, which always makes us a little bit uncomfortable. But there's maximum growth in that discomfort. In a conversation, knowing that perspective exchange, there's growth in. And defending one's own existing thoughts and beliefs, there is no growth in that. So learn to be a better conversationalist and really appreciate all the infinite perspectives out there and try to go from every single one of them, whether they disagree with you or not.
Yeah.
That's maximizing the growth just from conversation. So now you take that mindfulness and take it to everything that we do, every little tiny thing that we do, and look for the growth. Because that's the stuff that really, really makes us want to be alive, is just growth. Because that's really our only innate desire.
Love it. Yeah.
I think that's what I'm sort of fooling around with now, Jim.
Yeah, well, I'm on a very similar page, right? About in terms of with well-being, it has a lot to do with how do we experience wholeness and fullness of life, and also within our community, within our environment, how is that experienced in its fullness? And so all those different aspects, you know, the internal, the external, the relationships, all those things matter, and they all tie together, and there isn't anything that is really independent. So, you know, there's very much what you're saying. How do we look at all these areas and help them work together? Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun.
So I'm wondering if you guys wouldn't mind closing us out with doing Give Myself to the World.
Even though it's not released yet, we will do it here because we promised Jim we would always just say yes.
You guys are awesome. Wow, guys, that is amazing. Thank you so much. Anything, last words you want to say before we go?
I guess just keep your eyes open for Give Myself to the World. Release, it should be in the next month or so. We're doing the music video and finishing up mixing and edits and stuff like that. So, yeah. And then the festival at the end of May, 22nd to the 25th, called Rock and Soul Summit. It's yoga.
24th.
Oh, yeah, I get that wrong every time.
Say it again.
24th to the 27th?
Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah. Is that going to happen every Memorial Day, or is that the idea?
Yeah.
And that's up at Harris Ranch?
Yeah.
And
Harrison Serenity Ranch. Yeah.
Harrison Serenity Ranch.
Yeah.
Beautiful location.
Unreal.
So, and even that, when you're talking about growth, like we actually can't grow the number. The number is always going to be around 400, and because that is all that that property
Space.
can.
Yeah.
So how do we grow it? Because if we're not growing, we're dying. So we have to get really creative about how do we grow this event to maximize vibrational energy because we can't grow it in a number way. So and those are just fun challenges for us to be able to get our creative hat on and make something up.
And I think sometimes those are good because, as you were talking about wanting to be present and available to your audience, how do you do that with 20,000 people, but you can do it with 400?
Yeah, for sure. And that's why we like doing house concerts for 100 people too, because we pour ourselves out when we're on stage, and then afterwards we reveal ourselves, and hopefully that empowers everybody else to do the same.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Thank you again so much, guys. Love having you on the show. Hope we'll have you again sometime.
Cheers.
And be well.
Appreciate you.